When the two-part feature-length film adaptation of It was announced, there was a great deal of skepticism surrounding the films. Folks who had enjoyed the 1990 two-part miniseries, and in particular Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise, were aghast that anyone should try to remake a screen adaptation so near and dear to their hearts. And while some fans of the OG adaptation weren't won over, the 2017 and 2019 films are, in my opinion, superior to the 1990 version in nearly every way. Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. This is the final video in my series for Stephen King's 1986 novel, It, in which I will be discussing the 2017 and 2019 feature-length film adaptations. Having watched the 1990 version last week, when I watched the recent adaptation, the differences in quality were glaringly apparent. And I don't mean to trash the original version. For the time it was made and the budget restrictions they had to work within, it's not all bad. But while I was sniffing around the internet looking for reactions to the remake, I found some of the early criticisms of the 2017 and 2019 movies that were so obviously biased because the people who wrote them were offended that someone would remake a movie that they loved. But before we delve into the heart of why our nostalgic biases don't allow us to enjoy remakes and why we feel compelled to disavow them out of some undefinable principle, let's discuss the production, cast, score, and overall success of chapters 1 and 2 of the It feature-length film adaptations. I was planning to forego these history and background segments permanently, but my friend Josh was disappointed with me for not including it in last week's video, so I don't want to disappoint him again this week. You're a bully, Josh. Stop making me do research, damn you. It Chapters 1 and 2, History and Background. Development hell for the It movies began way back in 2009. As is the case with most King adaptations, the director, writers, producers, and seemingly everyone else that was initially involved changed over the years, and it took about 6 years before the core team solidified. Andy Muschietti came on to direct in 2015, and I gotta say, considering how little experience Muschietti had going into the film, it's honestly amazing how well it turned out. Prior to It, he had only directed one other feature film, which was 2013's Mama. And following the two It movies, he has only directed one additional film, The Flash, for the DC universe, which hasn't even been released yet. The weirdest thing about Muschietti's career, though, is that between 2013 and 2020, he was announced to be directing 12 different movies, none of which have come to fruition. Two of those films are King adaptations, too. One is the Bachman book Roadwork, and the other is a short story from the Skeleton Crew collection entitled The Jaunt. Here's hoping that those two movies actually get made. There are 3 screenwriters credited for the two films. They are Chase Palmer, Cary Fukunaga, and Gary Dauberman. Chase Palmer's writing credits prior to It, much like Muschietti's directing credits, are pretty slim. In fact, there doesn't appear to be anything in Chase Palmer's filmography prior to It Chapter 1, and only 2 mostly unknown films after that. Palmer appears to have only written for Chapter 1 of It and was not involved in writing for Chapter 2. Cary Fukunaga is best known for directing Season 1 of True Detective, and he has a number of writing, directing, and producing credits prior to and following It Chapter 1. Like Palmer, Fukunaga was not involved in writing for Chapter 2 of It. Gary Dauberman is best known for his writing for the Conjuring universe, which includes all of the Annabelle movies and The Nun. Dauberman co-wrote Chapter 1 of It with Palmer and Fukunaga and was the sole writer for Chapter 2. Dauberman is also the writer and director for the Salem's Lot feature-length film that is scheduled for release in April of 2023. This gives me some hope that the Salem's Lot movie won't be entirely awful. The score for both films was composed by Benjamin Wallfisch, who had also written the score for Blade Runner 2049, The Invisible Man, and A Cure for Wellness. Both film scores are available on Spotify, and I've been listening to them both while writing this script. There are some absolutely beautiful melodies, haunting movements, and just incredible string arrangements. The live instrumentation is exemplary. Occasionally, the intensity builds and morphs into heavy, blown-out, industrial, distorted, churning walls of sound, just dense, thick blasts of insanity that are absolutely crushing. It's dynamic and powerful and just perfect. 5 stars, no notes. The special effects are mostly enjoyable throughout both films. There is a scene or two where, as an audience member, we are very aware that we are seeing a computer-generated image, but overall the quality of the CGI and the practical effects are top-notch. The two films performed admirably at the box office, with Chapter 1 breaking records and currently sitting at the highest-grossing horror movie box office of all time. Chapter 1 had a budget of $40 million and grossed over $700 million, and Chapter 2 had a budget of $79 million and grossed $473 million. So while the second film didn't rake in the cash quite like the first one did, it was still an overwhelming success. The cast is too big for me to cover everyone involved and discuss them all individually, but suffice it to say, the performances are all fantastic, and they did an impressive job at casting adult actors who look so much like their younger counterparts. Everyone except Bev, that is. I mean, other than having red hair, these two don't look anything alike. No shade to either actress, though, they are both excellent in their roles. Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise is super enjoyable. Sure, he doesn't deliver an exact portrayal of the Pennywise of King's novel, but his vocal inflections, shuddering body movements, and that weird fucking eyeball thing he does all work for me. Is he better than Tim Curry in the role? Well, that's something that was hotly debated at the time of the release of Chapter 1, and is something I'd like to discuss further in this next segment. Nostalgic bias. Do you remember when they rebooted the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles back in 2014? I'll never forget the backlash I saw online for that movie. One specific commenter used the "stop ruining my childhood" line, and I mean, I'm sorry, seriously? Are you really concerned about someone tarnishing the legacy of the Ninja Turtles, my guy? Are you super worried that the same franchise that featured Vanilla Ice doing a choreographed dance number to his song Ninja Rap will somehow be defamed by this new production? I hate to break it to you, but those 3 Turtles movies from the early 90s definitely aren't as good as you remember them being. I found it funny that anyone could get that bent out of shape about it, but this guy and many others like him were genuinely up in arms about the Ninja Turtles reboot. But that's what always happens when some fondly remembered piece of intellectual property is rebooted or reworked for a new adaptation, isn't it? Some folks get genuinely upset that someone would dare to appropriate something they hold dear, a movie that has that special sentimental sheen on it for them, regardless of whether or not the original was actually all that great. Now, I'm not saying that the original It adaptation and the Ninja Turtles movies are comparable. I mean, the first Turtle movie did release the same year as It, and they had virtually the same budget, and they both involved sewer-dwelling creatures, but I digress. All I'm saying is that no matter the movie, and regardless of its quality, if you remake just about anything, you're going to make a lot of people irrationally angry. Have you ever reflected on something you watched as a kid and remembered it being awesome, but when you went back and watched it years later, it didn't live up to those memories you had of it? And in some cases, that thing you thought you loved was actually shit. That happened to me with Thundercats. I would have sworn the original cartoon was super badass and that the animation was awesome, but I watched it a couple years ago for the first time in decades, and it's some of the most boring, unremarkable animating ever. I convinced myself that Thundercats was amazing, but it was honestly terrible. Now, I'm not saying the OG It is terrible or on the level of Thundercats, but it's definitely not the cinematic masterpiece some folks seem to remember. More often than not, when someone has a strong negative reaction to a remake or reboot, it's because they have a nostalgic bias, which makes it hard for them to appreciate the new version. And the same applies when people similarly have a love for the novel the screen adaptation was based on. There was no shortage of these folks on Reddit and Quora when the It movies dropped. A few choice quotes include, "The new movie is a shit adaptation. It's a complete joke compared to the source material." And "Whoever gave the 2017 movie stellar reviews are all on crack." And my personal favorite, "The main theme of King's novel was tossed, the kids' strong friendship. And after Georgie dies, there isn't a single scene from the book." And both of those claims are demonstrably false. This dude was very clearly butthurt about the movies solely based on the fact that he has a deep-seated love for the novel and the original adaptation. Anyway, it's my personal opinion that anyone who thinks the 1992 part TV miniseries is better than the 2017 and 2019 movies is delusional and can't see beyond the very cloudy lenses of their nostalgia goggles. I think it's entirely reasonable to prefer Tim Curry over Skarsgård. Curry's performance is indeed iconic. But aside from that, and I don't even think that this can reasonably be considered a hot take, the movies are inarguably better in just about every way imaginable. Sure, remakes and reboots may never live up to a cherished book or movie you have held on a pedestal for whatever reason, but you can't put that on the new production. That's on you. We have a tendency to mythologize and exaggerate the things we love in our minds. We associate them with moments and periods of our lives that are dear to us, and we ascribe a greater significance to them than they likely deserve. All I'm saying is don't get mad or take it personally when a book or movie you love gets remade or reinterpreted, because that new adaptation, that re-envisioned work will likely be important to someone else the same way the original is important to you. And that's kind of beautiful. Final thoughts. Did you hear they're going to be remaking The Crow and they've cast Bill Skarsgård to play Eric Draven? Oh my god, this is sacrilegious. The Crow is a masterpiece. How dare they remake this classic film that I have been a big fan of since my early teens? This is a disgrace to the legacy of the late great Brandon Lee, and I am offended, nay, I am disgusted that they would even consider reprising this milestone of my pubescent goth face. They're ruining my childhood. My dogs have started barking because they heard me yelling in the basement. Shut up, Moo! Whatever. Next week, I'll be discussing King's 1987 medieval fantasy novel, The Eyes of the Dragon. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Fantasy is not my thing, and I'll never understand why you nerds get all hot and bothered over dragons and magic and shit. But I have to admit, I enjoyed The Eyes of the Dragon more than I had anticipated, and I'm not happy about it. New videos drop on this channel every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so please subscribe to the channel to get notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty pleased with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.